Late one evening in a quiet suburban neighborhood, an unexpected controversy was brewing. A single mailbox painted the wrong shade had sent shockwaves through the community, triggering whispers, tension, and ultimately a showdown that no one saw coming. In the middle of it all was one determined homeowner and a relentless HOA board member who would stop at nothing to enforce her will. What unfolded next would turn an ordinary cul-de-sac into the stage for a viral story about power, pettiness, and unexpected justice. If you love real-life neighborhood drama and shocking twists, you're in the right place. Stick around, because this story will keep you hooked until the very end. Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on so you never miss the wildest HOA and Karen stories that we bring to life. Your likes and comments help more people discover these jaw-dropping tales and support our channel so we can keep creating them. Now, let's get into today's story. The neighborhood of Willow Pines prided itself on manicured lawns, neatly trimmed hedges, and a sense of uniformity that the HOA worked hard to maintain. For years, the residents complied with the unwritten rules of conformity, rarely challenging the regulations posted in the quarterly newsletters. That was until Daniel, a quiet graphic designer who had just moved into the area, decided to repaint his battered old mailbox. The original color had chipped away over the years, and he chose a tasteful deep navy that complemented his house's trim. He thought nothing of it, believing he was improving the street's appearance. Within days, however, Karen, an outspoken HOA board member known for patrolling the neighborhood with a clipboard, took notice. To her, the shade of blue violated community aesthetics. Instead of simply sending a polite reminder, she drafted an email announcing an emergency HOA meeting to address what she called a significant infraction threatening neighborhood harmony. As the news spread, residents were bewildered. Some rolled their eyes at Karen's obsession with rules, while others felt a creeping dread about how far she might take this. Daniel, meanwhile, remained unaware that his simple paint job had sparked a brewing storm. On the night of the meeting, the clubhouse buzzed with tension. Karen sat at the front with a stack of documents, determined to rally the board to issue fines and force Daniel to repaint the mailbox, neighbors whispered, glancing between Karen's rigid posture and Daniel's empty chair. He had only just received the notice and was rushing from work. As the clock ticked and murmurs rose, Karen's sense of control seemed to grow, her voice ringing out as she laid out the threat posed by non-approved colors. She claimed property values would plummet and standards would crumble if action wasn't taken immediately. By the time Daniel arrived, the vote was nearly called. His stunned expression said everything as he realized he had been cast as the villain in a neighborhood morality play. The first chapter of their battle ended not with resolution, but with an escalating sense of conflict, as Karen vowed to issue a citation, and Daniel quietly decided he would not back down. The next morning, a formal violation notice appeared on Daniel's door. It threatened fines of $50 per day until the mailbox was repainted. At first, he considered complying to avoid trouble. But something in the heavy-handedness of the notice stirred a resolve he hadn't felt before. He began reading the HOA's bylaws carefully, discovering that the approved color list had expired 2 years earlier without a proper vote to renew it. That meant Karen's entire argument rested on an unenforceable guideline. Armed with this knowledge, he drafted a respectful but firm letter challenging the violation. Karen, however, doubled down. She printed flyers warning that rogue mailboxes would erode community trust, slipping them under every door. She even took photos of Daniel's property to circulate on the HOA's private Facebook group. Neighbors who had once ignored HOA politics now found themselves pulled into a bizarre debate over paint swatches. Some defended Daniel, praising the color choice. Others feared crossing Karen, who had a history of pushing for aggressive enforcement. As the days passed, the fines Karen imposed continued to climb on paper, but Daniel refused to pay. Instead, he compiled a dossier of her actions, noting procedural errors and possible harassment. Word of the dispute began leaking beyond Willow Pines, thanks to a neighbor who posted about it on a popular local forum. Soon strangers were commenting online, mocking the HOA's obsession with mailbox hues. A local journalist even reached out, intrigued by the story. Under mounting public scrutiny, Karen called another emergency meeting, this time demanding a vote to formally reinstate the color policy. She expected overwhelming support, but as residents filled the clubhouse, a different mood hung in the air. People who had long tolerated her rigidity were now embarrassed by the ridicule. When she tried to speak, murmurs of dissent cut her off. Daniel sat quietly at the back, watching the tide turn. The vote failed spectacularly, leaving Karen visibly shaken. Yet she refused to let go, hinting at legal action and accusing Daniel of undermining community values. What began as a petty enforcement was morphing into a high-stakes power struggle. Daniel realized that if he didn't take proactive steps, Karen might escalate further. He reached out to a lawyer specializing in HOA disputes, who confirmed his findings about the expired policy. Together, they drafted a cease and desist letter warning Karen and the HOA board to stop the fines and harassment. This marked a turning point. Karen received the letter and, rather than backing down, posted a fiery rant online accusing Daniel of lawyering up to destroy the neighborhood's unity. But the backlash she expected didn't come. Instead, residents began publicly siding with Daniel, sharing their own stories of petty citations and unfair treatment. A small coalition formed, calling for a vote to remove Karen from the board at the next annual meeting. Sensing her grip slipping, Karen tried one last gambit. She filed a complaint in small claims court to recover the fines. She was certain the judge would sympathize with her cause. Daniel, though nervous, arrived with his lawyer and a folder of meticulously documented evidence. The courtroom was packed with curious neighbors and even a reporter. Karen's confident tone faltered as the judge asked for the basis of her claims. When Daniel's lawyer pointed out the expired policy and lack of due process, the judge's expression hardened. In a few measured sentences, the case was dismissed, and Karen was warned against misusing her authority. Word spread like wildfire. That evening, Daniel returned home to find supportive notes from neighbors tucked into his doorframe. Online, the story exploded, becoming a symbol of standing up to petty overreach. The annual meeting arrived weeks later under a cloud of anticipation. Residents packed the room, some wearing navy blue pins in solidarity with Daniel. When the vote to remove Karen was called, the outcome was decisive. She was ousted from the board, replaced by a new president who promised transparency and fairness. Daniel, though offered a seat on the board, declined, preferring to return to his quiet life. His mailbox, still painted deep navy, now stood as a quiet monument to resilience and community pushback. What began as a trivial complaint had evolved into a cautionary tale about unchecked authority and the power of collective action. Karen, humiliated and isolated, eventually sold her house and moved away. In her absence, Willow Pine slowly shed its reputation for pettiness, adopting more flexible guidelines and focusing on real issues rather than trivial aesthetics. Daniel went back to his design work, but he often received messages from strangers who had seen the viral story, thanking him for inspiring them to stand up to unfair treatment. The story of the Navy mailbox became a kind of local legend, retold at block parties and new resident orientations. And though Daniel never sought the spotlight, he quietly felt a sense of pride that his small act of defiance had sparked something bigger than himself. If you enjoyed this story and want more unbelievable real-life HOA dramas, make sure you're subscribed, hit the like button, and share this video with friends who love neighborhood showdowns. Your support helps us keep digging up these wild tales and turning them into compelling stories you won't find anywhere else.